Stone Paxton Music and Life, welcome to my channel. For all those that are not subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit like, and also make sure you hit that bell to get the notifications for all my latest videos. I'm back again with another one, you guys. Thank you for all those that have subscribed to my channel, all the people that have subscribed to my channel through the shorts. Hopefully you become a member where you're going to actually follow everything else I do and not just the shorts. I get a lot of messages with people asking me how I got my start using AKAI product. What was the beginning of me using the MPC? What was the start of it? How did I get into this machine, and why am I so sold on this machine? What is it about AKAI that had me so sold? By the way, this is MPC 3000. I decided to bring it out since I'm having a conversation about AKAI and how that got started. I wanted to bring this out and set this in front of you. So people ask me about, what made me, like I meet producers all over the world and we'll have conversations about music. If I'm speaking at a music conference, we'll have a conversation about music, and they'll ask me, how did I get my start and what DAW am I using, or what do I use to create my music? Typically, most of them think I'm using a DAW to create my music. I bounce around. I do use some DAWs sometime, but mostly 90% of everything I do is created in the AKAI MPC. My journey started back in the 80s with using sequencers in general. I think the first beat machine, shall I say, or should we say, it was more like a rhythm box. You know what I'm saying? Back then is what we called them. We didn't call it a beat machine. It was more like a rhythm machine. And that was the Lin 9000. Now the weird part is I was young when the Lin 9000 came out. So that was the early 80s when I started using the Lin 9000. I think I might even been 8 or 9 when the Lin 9000 came out, because it was pretty expensive and I wanted it really bad. And I remember telling my mom that I would cut the yard, I would shovel extra snow, I worked that summer job in order to be able to pay back if she got it for me. Because I remember a guy at the music store. I remember I used to go into the music store when I was young, and I remember seeing it there, and I used to mess around with it. And they only sold 5,000 of these machines in total that sold. So I remember that machine, and I just remember it standing out, and what, it just made me want it. I was like, I didn't even know why I wanted it. But me being a drummer, I started drumming at 6 years old in church. So I think it was the rhythms that caught my attention and how you could program it. I watched the guy in the store work with it, and when I asked him the price, I was like, man, I was thinking, my mom's probably not gonna be able to afford it. But when she saw that I really wanted the machine, and I really was into the machine, and I was a musician, I'm playing in church, I'm in band, and from elementary on up. So I think she saw my passion, and she got the machine for me. The Lin 9000 was my first introduction to anything remotely close to a rhythm machine. That was the beginning of it. But what I noticed once I got it, because I was trying to record and take my little money, I think by the time I turned probably 15, 14, 1984, 1985, I wanted to start recording. And so the Lin drum was gonna come in handy. Right after the Lin drum, there was this rolling machine that came out. And what I liked about the rolling was, it was a sequencer. So the dude at the music store, one day I came in, he was saying that there's a rolling coming out, this machine where you still do the same thing. He was saying like the Lin drum, you could, program drums and stuff, but you could also connect things to it, and you could sequence with it, and you could create the whole song, he said. So I thought that was cool, because I know that back then when I was young, it costed a lot of money to go in the studio, and my mom didn't have that kind of money to pay. And then you had to mic the drums back then. So typically it takes sometimes 2 to 3 hours to mic the drum for the drummer to get his stuff together. And I don't even think I probably would. It would have been me playing the drums back then anyway, but I remember acquiring about the price of studio time. So the Lin drum allowed me to be able to create at home and just create rhythms, basically, along playing piano. And then I program it, and I'd be over there playing piano and, creating the rhythm. And then I ended up getting a 4-track recorder. So I was able to actually record the rhythms onto 4-track and sing vocals on it, and then sync it up. It was a lot of cool stuff I was able to do. But what really changed the game for me in sequencers was the Roland MSQ 700. That was like my real first sequencer, because on the 9000, the only thing about the 9000, it didn't really have MIDI. It had that like pre-MIDI where you could connect something to it and create MIDI. It didn't have MIDI. So you couldn't connect like keyboards and all that stuff to it unless you had like this extra connection for it, right? It was called pre-MIDI. So the Roland changed the game. That was like unheard of. You know, the MSQ 700, it was like, yo, like now you can really, you know, you can MIDI, you can have your keyboards connecting, you can sequence, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff, right? So that was the beginning of general MIDI, by the way. That was kind of like the beginning of MIDI, was that Roland MSQ 700 was like the beginning of standard MIDI, you know. And then like as far as like a MIDI DAW, then came the inception of MIDI, which allowed for the MIDI DAW to happen, for you to be able to connect keyboards to your computer. Program I'll never forget. I thought it was neat. I was like, this guy, I went into a studio. I think I was that time I was 14, and I ended up getting after the Roland, I ended up getting an MPC 60, right? And I remember the dude saying, oh yeah, in the studio now we have a DAW. And I was like, a DAW? What's a DAW? I don't even think he said a DAW. I think he said something like, yeah, Paxton. Everybody would call me by my last name. He say, hey, young Paxton, we got this program where we can, you know, you can program. You don't need to have your band, you know, you play everything. So you can just, you know, input it in the computer. You know what I'm saying? You can, you know, you got the blocks. He said it's like blocks and stuff. And then you'll play, and then the blocks, you can mute them and take them out. That was like the beginning. I'll never forget that. That was like the beginning of a DAW, a DAW that sequences, that has MIDI where you can connect the keyboards, right? So that was pretty interesting. I was like, oh, that's cool. And that program was called Sound Tools, you guys. 1989, it got introduced. And that was called Sound Tools, which eventually migrated to Pro Tools. So the original Pro Tools was called Sound Tools. And then I went on to use a program later on called Voyatra SP Gold. You can look that program, all these programs up, you can look and see, okay? And so I had the Lindrum. Lindrum didn't have as many capabilities to really do everything that I possibly could have done as a producer, right? Migrated from the Lindrum to the Roland MSQ 700 because it had MIDI and you can do other things. You could really put together a composition. And then migrated from that to the MPC 60. And I still have my MPC 60, I just don't have it here, it's in storage. Migrated from the MP 60 to, in 1988, the MPC 3000. Of course, you had the 62, the MPC 60 and the 62, okay? But I jumped from the 60 to the 3000. And that was it for me. Once I got on the MPC 3000, you guys, this baby right here, I've had this actual unit, the same one you're looking at. I've had this ever since I was 18 years old. I'm 54 years old now. I've had this since 1988. This machine changed my life. This machine gave me, and the reason why I'm so passionate about AKAI, everybody wants to know when did I change and all that stuff. I have been using it since I was a kid. I'm not just on here capping up, you know what I'm saying? None of that. Like, this has been my life before any of the stuff you guys see going on now. Anything you see going on now, anybody on YouTube talking about the MPC, I've been using this. EA Ski's been using this. Rodney Jerkins, Battle Cat, DJ Quick, Dallas Austin, Jermaine Dupri, Babyface, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Journey, tons of bands from rock to R&B. Use this to program because it made it a lot easier to create the sequences as far as drums and music. But I've been using this since I was, if we want to be correct, 17, 16. I started using this particular machine since 1988 when it came out, and it was very expensive. Back then it was like $4,000. The Lindrum was like $4,000. These machines were not cheap. They relatively kept their price because it was more of a niche market, but now you have more people getting into it. So I think it's expanded and went beyond what it used to be back in the day. But back in the day, you didn't have that many people even had these. If you went to somebody's house who had this, yo, trust me, it was considered like a big deal that you had an MPC, and everybody in the neighborhood that was rapping would come to your house and get, to get beats done. Or we didn't call it beats back then. They would come to your house and get tracks done. You know what I'm saying? But this machine changed my life. Why am I loyal to AKAI? I am loyal to the concept and the idea of what AKAI stood for, and they still stand for, which is the quality of a product that can sequence well. There's no sequencer like the MPC. I don't care what nobody says. I'll go up to battle for that. I believe in that. There's other programs that you can make sequence and swing a certain way, but nothing swings like the MPC. And I'm sorry, but I said it and I'll say it again. Nothing quite swings like the MPC. This machine has done a world of things for me. It definitely has changed my life. I'll say that again. I ended up getting a production deal because of the quality of my music. When people were hearing this music, when I got my production deal with Grand Jury Warner Brothers as a producer, when the group I was with, we got our management deal and the record situation back in the day that we got, it was because of the sound. They were hearing this sound that I was doing, and that sound was coming from this machine. This machine changed my life, and that's why I'm so loyal to the concept of this machine. So what I liked about it back then is with this, and then, I forgot to mention too, I also had the SP1200. So what I liked about the SP1200 is the fact of how, this is before I had the, I got the SP1200 in between the time that I got, because I had started making tracks for people. So then I didn't have to ask my aunt or my mom to give me money to get what I wanted. I had the money to get the machines I wanted. So when I bought the MPC60, I bought it with my own money. When I got the SP1200, I bought that with my own money. And I love the SP1200 because that was before I had the MPC60, so I forgot to mention that. So you could chop the samples up, and it had the pads on the front. You could do some really cool stuff, and the drums were very big. You're talking about, 8-bit to where it was dirty, but it sounded like freaking, it just was nasty, man. There's nothing like it. And of course, they reissued the SP1200. I would have actually still had that machine, but a friend of mine, longtime friend of mine from Decatur, Illinois, he wanted to buy it when I moved to Vegas, and I ended up shipping the machine. I had all the discs. I shipped the machine to him, paid out of my pocket to ship it. I think it cost me almost $200 to ship it because it was heavy. And I was only selling it back then for $1,200, and even back then it was worth more money. And my buddy, it hurts my heart because that would have still been sitting in my studio. And he never even paid me for the machine, you guys. This friend, I never even spoke to him again. I missed that machine, and that's another thing. You got these machines sitting around. They're legendary machines, and believe me, they're worth a lot. I had 2 of these. I just recently sold one of the 3,000. This is the one that I have left. I still have this when I sold one. But I would have had my SP1200, the original SP1200. But like I said, I sold it to somebody supposed to be a friend of mine, and he never paid me. That was pretty cold-blooded. But he understood the concept and the value of that machine, obviously, because he never paid me. But look, so I've been using this machine all my life, you guys. And when I look at this machine takes me back, man. I mean, I remember hooking keyboards up to it and doing the MIDI, and how creative I would be. But the thing about this, the sampling time, you didn't have that much sampling time with this machine. So your mind had to be creative to take an album or a record and chop it up. And what worked for me, I was able to actually play some keys and bass and stuff and live drums. And I used to do some crazy stuff like mic in my live drums. I used to do that back then, right into the inputs of the back of this thing here, and create these drums of my own, right? But the sampling time, you didn't have that much sampling time. So when you created, as you know, when you watch Jay Dilla, he has the same machine. You didn't have that much sampling time. You see Jermaine Dupri, he still swears on his 3,000. You didn't have that much sampling time. But your mind, if it was in a creative concept, if you were a creative person, you could take this machine and make it do some crazy stuff. And Roger Lynn's concept of the MPC was to be played like an instrument. That's what it said in the book. When you got the book and you opened it and it would break it down to you, it said that this machine should be played like an instrument. I kid you not. If I had the book here, I'd show you. Anybody that has the book, any OGs on here, you know what I'm saying. You guys know it said that in the book. It was to be played like an instrument. And that's why you look at the 3000, and you look at the MPCX SE, I go, okay, this machine has been with me most of my life. And I'm like a mad scientist when it comes to using this machine, the way I think, the way I use it. And I can attribute that to being on that machine so long. You know, like I say, everybody's AKAI now, and I love it. I love to see the community that has been created around AKAI. I love to see the community that has been saturated around AKAI. Like everybody's into the AKAI movement now, and I'm glad that I play a part in that, being a content creator here on YouTube, and been a content creator here on YouTube since 2008. Actually, I started with YouTube in 2005 and I stopped. Then I started back in 2008. So I started when YouTube started. I just didn't stay on it, and I disappeared for 3 years and then popped back up. So when I started my channel on YouTube, there's only a few people that are still on YouTube now that were on YouTube when I started. Facts. A lot of other people that I see that jumped on the AKAI bandwagon, they weren't AKAI users in 2008. And you can go back and look back at people's videos, and you'll see. I've lived this, if we want to call it AKAI life. I've lived the life of AKAI because I had no choice. This was the machine that I carried everywhere I went. So this has been my life. I can't pretend. I can't get on YouTube and act like, you know, all this stuff, you know, being a content creator, doing extra stuff. I can only do what I know. And that is, I know this machine. I know how this machine works. I know how it interacts. I know what it's done for my life, more so. And that's why I stay true to it. So when you hear me speak about this machine, and sometimes you hear this enthusiasm, you're like, dude, is way overexcited about this machine. AKAI doesn't pay me to say what I say. I say what I say because this machine has done a lot for me. And that's why I say what I say, not because I'm getting paid to say it. I truly speak this way because, you know, I've been using this machine since AKAI started putting out MPCs. Before then, the Lindrum was my first rhythm machine. The first. Roger Lynn's Lindrum, that was my first. Then Roger Lynn put his signature on the MPC 60. I grabbed one of those. But my first MIDI sequencer was the Roland MSQ 700. The Roland MSQ 700 changed the game for me as far as a sequencer. As far as a drum pattern machine, the Lindrum changed that for me. And then when AKAI came out with the 60, that changed the game because you had the drum machine and the sequencer all in one place. That changed the game for me, you guys. That was it. I was sold, I was hooked, and I never turned back since then. I still use a DAW, like I'll create on the MPCX SE or the Live, you know, or the 61 or 37 key, and I'll dump it into Studio One and record my vocals. But all of my sequencing is done in standalone mode, and I do that in the MPCX and the new MPC series of machines, and I love it, and I don't default on it, you guys. It's been true to me. It doesn't matter if I have 1 million subscribers or if I have 2 subscribers or 3. I'll always get on YouTube and rock this machine the same way I rock when people are sitting in the studio with me. You know what I mean? So anybody that's getting into the AKAI machine and you're new and you're just now getting into this machine and you might not understand it, or you might not know the history of it because it might be your first day you come across this video or somebody else's video, just know this. This machine is not a hiccup. Excuse me. This machine is not a hiccup. This machine creates some very serious and interesting rhythms based on the way you think and based on how you want to project your emotion. Whatever emotion you put in this machine is what you get out. If you put an emotion in this machine, you're going to get out everything you put into it. AKAI has always been ahead of the game. And here's the crazy part. I'll tell you something crazy. I remember back in, this had to be 2000 and, I think maybe 2000 and, maybe between 2005 in 2000 and, no, wrong, 2001, and I don't know. I think it might have started maybe around 2005 or 6. I can't remember. I just know I was going through it. AKAI, I think 2010. No, 2010. I'm sorry. 2009 or 10. When AKAI first introduced the Renaissance. I can't remember when it was. Because they had the MPC Element. I got the Renaissance. I got the Element, the Studio. But I think the first one they introduced, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was either the Ren or the Element. And I felt lost because my MPC 3000 and 2000 and 2000 XL, I couldn't use it anymore. Well, wrong. I could use it, but I couldn't use it in the new digital world, right? And I still have my MPC 3000 and 2000 connected with all the outputs to the big analog console, and I was running MIDI sync. I had the keyboards connected through MIDI, and then I had it connected to the clock, the MIDI clock to Pro Tools, right? And that's how I was doing. And all my vocals were live. Here's the crazy part. I was slaving all my vocals, right? So I'd have this hooked up to the computer. I'd have the keyboards MIDI and all the modules. And then my vocals were actually live. So the only thing that was in my computer as I'm recording was my vocals. All that was laid across the mixer live. I had my music coming out of 2 stereo channels of this, all live in real time. And then when I was done, I would dump the music into the computer along with the vocals in sync. And that's how I was recording. Like, you know, I wouldn't print the music to tape. We would call it to tape, but that would be to DAW. I wouldn't print it to DAW until I was done producing the track and laid all the vocals. And I'm like, cool, now let me dump the music per track into the DAW because it would line up with the vocals because I already had the vocals connected and sync. I had the computer, the DAW connected to this. So when I hit play on the computer, the MPC would follow, which means the vocals would follow and the modules would follow. You know what I mean? The only problem back then with MIDI, and anybody that knows MIDI, what I'm about to say, you're gonna laugh, because we would MIDI, like if you see my machines over there, I would have like, no joke, like 16 MIDI devices, right? And I would be MIDI-ing them all. But here's the thing, if you had 16 MIDI devices, you only get 16 MIDI channels, right? So you had to go and turn off, like if I had a keyboard, I would have that on channel 1. If I had a module, I might use 2 sounds on that. So that'd be channel 1 and 2. I would have let's say I'd have the keyboard on channel 1. I'd have another module on channel 2 and 3. Well, 2, yeah, and 3, and I would use those, right? So whatever, and this is how crazy MIDI was. Imagine this keyboard. Whatever channels you weren't using on this keyboard with MIDI, you had to go into that keyboard and turn each MIDI channel off so that it wouldn't play on the channels that were being used, or it would make a whole bunch of noise. The shit was crazy. So every single module, so if you had 16 modules, you had to literally go in, turn off the volume for each MIDI channel that you weren't using so it wouldn't conflict with the MIDI channel you're using off of this device or that device or vice versa, whatever devices, you'd had to do that with each one. That was the only thing that used to drive me crazy, was that. Also, every time when you were using MIDI, which was interesting, is now I noticed on the 3000 I didn't have that issue. The only time I started having this issue with MIDI like that was the MPC 2000, and I think it might have been a software issue because the 3000 never really did it. I noticed I started having that issue more around when I bought the MPC 2000. It would do this MIDI glitch, like, so it would be playing. Let's say you would get halfway in the middle of the song, and all of a sudden it's getting ready to go into the next first bar of the 8 bar, right? And then all of a sudden it would glitch. That would be a dropout, almost like somebody pressed mute and stopped it. That was the only downfall to MIDI. Sometime it was like a MIDI glitch, but I never experienced it that much on this machine as much as I did on the MPC 2000. So I'm thinking back then that might have been a software update issue. And I'll be honest with you, back then I wasn't even really updating my machine, because back then you're supposed to connect it to the computer and update it. And I wasn't even, I think most cats probably weren't even updating their machine. We just turned it on, went to work. But the MPC 2000 has been the lead to my production, you guys. Like, when I tell you that it has truly changed my life, it has truly changed my life. And I didn't just get on YouTube and start a YouTube channel and say, hey, man, I want to be cool. I'm going to start an MPC channel. It was never about that. Me starting my YouTube channel, at the time I started it, like I said, it wasn't as many cats doing MPC then. Trust me when I tell you, like there was two other cats. No, it was me and two other cats that I saw all the time that had a YouTube channel then. All the people I see now, they didn't even exist on YouTube back then. So I didn't just create this channel and use MPC to get attention. This machine has been my life. I'm glad for those that message me in my Gmail and ask me to talk about that. I appreciate you guys for asking me to talk about it and asking me, what made me get into the MPC line of devices. That was the reason to go back to it again and explain why. Was because I was a young kid. I started playing drums at 6. The Linn drum, I think I was 8 or 9. The Linn drum was my first rhythm machine. Let me see, and 83 was my first full sequencer, which was the Roland MSQ 700. That was my introduction. Then I went into the MPC 60, then the MPC 3000, and then the rest was history. I did 2000, 2000 XL, 4000. I got all of them, you guys. So that was the reason, was because I could create. I had a creative mind. I was a drummer. I was in band in school. I all my life it's been music, and I wanted to find a way to create. And it just seemed so cool when I first started hearing rhythm machines. And as a kid, I thought it was so cool, like how you can make this machine and there's a drums inside that machine. And like you hear the drums, like what I was playing at 6, 7, and 8 years old. And I was like, man, that's cool, man, to be able to hear the drums coming out of this little box. That's the way my mind was back then, right? I was blown away. So once I got into that, that was it for me, you guys. I was sold, migrated, to the MPC line of product because Roger Lynn's name, I remembered his name from the Linn drum, and I saw that name. I was like, oh, he's involved. And back then as a kid, I just saw the name, so I was like, oh, that guy made this machine too. Of course I know more about it now, but as a kid I was like, oh, that's the same guy's name that's on the machine I had at first. So when I started using it, and there was nobody to teach you back then, and believe me, this machine, if you use this, for those who've never used a 3000, you'll get on this. It'll look complicated as hell. Trust me. I feel like the newer MPCs are more user-friendly than these, because these here had a book out of this world, and you wasn't going to really know how to use it if you really didn't dive into that book. To me, the MPCs now, it's easier to catch on to them. And I don't know why. Maybe because the screens are bigger, because the parameters are in this. This screen is very small. You didn't have good eyes. Your ass would be trying to look at the, figure out, try to turn up the LED to see the words. But it was a lot different and more complicated to me to learn on this version of the MPC basis, this new one. To me, the new one is definitely, it's an easy way to learn, my opinion. But you guys, that is the reason why I got into the AKAI, which is why I'm so can you imagine being 6 years old, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, and being introduced to the Linn drum and how your mind would be? Can you imagine being in your early teens, 16, 17, being on 17, 18, being on an MPC or MPC 60? Can you imagine? And then now, where it went now, can you just imagine? That's me, you guys. That's me. That's EA Ski. That's Jermaine Dupri. That's Battlecat. That's DJ Quick. That's Rock Wilder. That's Babyface. All these cats, man, that use the machine. Can you imagine how our minds think? Our minds we're in amazement because we watched this machine evolve to where it's at now. So sequence-wise, can't nobody touch this machine. And once again, I argue down to the Nile River about that, because I know what this machine has done for me. I've heard it, I've seen it, you've heard it, you see what I do with it. The history started back in the day with these, and now we're here, you guys. And honestly, I still feel brand new when I do this. I feel like this is my first day. Every time I hop on this machine, I feel like it's my first day I did this. Like I just started doing this. Like, man, come on, let's go. I just started doing this. I never lost my excitement. And I'll be honest, with the new arranger mode on the MPC, it has excited me again about creating music because I get bored very fast. And I got tired of seeing the same screen, right? And that's the way it was with this. I got tired of seeing the same screen. So when they came out with the new MPCs, got me excited. Now the arranger mode has me excited again, you guys. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of Akai and where they're going. They're going an awesome direction, you guys. Listen, if you have an Akai MPC, believe me when I tell you, you have not made a bad investment. You have made the best investment of your life that you'll ever make when it comes to a MIDI production device, MIDI production center. You have made the best investment you'll ever make in your life. This machine is not a hiccup, and I'll say it again. This machine and these machines are not a mistake. They are a blessing from the universe to the producer and the musician community and the beat maker community. Get on your machine and create great music, you guys. That's what this is about. Create great music and put it out. Release your records. Let the world hear what you have inside of you. Why have such a great machine and you're sitting on that work? And with that said, you guys, thank you for tuning in. Stone Paxton Music and Life, Stone Paxton University, Stone Paxton, the MPC connoisseur. And this video is brought to you by Brand Artist Coalition Music Distribution. Distribute your music today to 242 territories. Keep control of all your music and receive 100% of your royalties, you guys. Stone Paxton Music and Life. Catch you on the next video, you guys. And I'm out. Stone Paxton Music and Life.